Welcome to this new episode of Urdhva podcast. Urdhva is to rise higher in our consciousness by listening to the Shabda Brahma, the transcendental sound of Bhagavad Gita, which will elevate our consciousness to a higher level of bliss, clarity, accuracy, and free of all negative emotions, anxieties. So today's episode, we will discuss about contamination. What is contamination? All around we see contamination in air, in water, in sound. So each of the contaminations, like air pollution, we have developed metrics to measure the air pollution. Then if the particulate matter is little high, we have air purifiers. And each of the fundamental elements are getting contaminated all over the world. Soil contamination is there because of the unrestricted use of fertilizers. So Save Soil is one of the big initiatives we recently saw. Otherwise, there can be no cultivation for the future generations. The yield goes down and the quality of the taste of the food, the vegetables, the fruits goes down. So coming to air pollution, coming to water pollution, there is contamination of water, which was unheard of maybe 150 or 200 years back. Because of various chemical fertilizers, chemical factories, the Industrial Revolution brought in so many industries releasing solvents and such kind of things into our rivers, contaminating our rivers. And also the usage of plastics has contaminated the ocean water. So everywhere we see the contamination. And then another important contamination is consciousness contamination. So Bhagavad Gita deals with the subject of consciousness contamination. Our innermost existence is consciousness. And that gets contaminated, because of which many of us are suffering from depression and anxiety. Because of the consciousness contamination, like we saw in the COVID time. Contamination happens due to interaction with a foreign substance, a contaminant, contagion. So what is that? We saw COVID-19, the virus, a foreign body which is attacking our immune system, and many deaths happened because of the contamination, degradation of health happened. So here, the consciousness contamination is the fundamental contamination Bhagavad Gita addresses, and also gives us various techniques to solve this consciousness contamination. We can understand the consciousness contamination through a very simple example. Like if you allow the light pass through a colored glass, what happens? The color of the light gets changed. So a sort of the light gets contaminated. It's white color, it loses and it develops the color of the tinted glass. So here, if white light is taken as a reference, the foreign agent is the colored glass, and when the light comes in contact with that colored glass, it changes its nature. It becomes mixed with the contaminant. Likewise, our consciousness also comes with a contaminant called material energy. Consciousness is pure, the soul is pure, and the symptom of the soul is consciousness, but it becomes pervertly reflected, like the light gets reflected by the color of the glass. When consciousness comes in contact with matter, it becomes contaminated, because of which there is perversion and there is confusion and there is a lot of negative energies we experience, negative thoughts. So what is the solution to cure this consciousness contamination? The solution is given in the Bhagavad Gita. It says, when our actions are dovetailed to the will of the Ishvara, the Supreme Consciousness, that will make us happy. So we saw the 5 basic truths. Out of these truths, the 2 truths are very important, Ishvara and Jiva. We are all Jivas, living entities. So when we dovetail our actions to the will of Ishvara, that will make us happy. And that is called pure state. And we are acting independently, that is called the contaminated state. So this purified activities is called bhakti. When the activities are dovetailed to the will of the Ishvara, surrender to the Ishvara, the will of the Ishvara, then those activities are called bhakti. They are called purified activities, and that will make us happy. So this is the solution to purify this materially contaminated consciousness. So there are two impurification in the consciousness. One is the identity, contamination and the desire contamination. Once we are disconnected from the will of the Ishvara, means yoga has not happened. Viyoga. The actual meaning of yoga is integrating into the will of the Ishvara. So when yoga has happened, we will be happy. That is called bhakti. When we are disconnected from the will of the Ishvara, then we are contaminated. And we develop so many unnecessary desires, unnecessary identities, religious identities, language-based identities, color of the skin-based identities, and we fight based on that contamination. There is a lot of unrest and lack of peace because of those contamination. So bhakti activities, they appear to be ordinary activities, but they are not contaminated. So an ignorant person may see that a devotee is also engaged in is an ordinary man, a similar kind of activity, but he does not know that the devotee or the Lord are not contaminated by impure consciousness. When the Lord descends into the material world, he is not contaminated by material consciousness. Affected person, a materially affected person, a materially contaminated person is unfit to speak on transcendental matters and give us an everlasting book called Bhagavad Gita. There is no value to the person who is contaminated by material consciousness. One cannot say anything about the transcendence without being free from materially contaminated consciousness. So the Lord is not materially contaminated. Each avatara, when it descends, comes in a pure form. So, both the Ishvara and the Jiva are transcendental. But Ishvara does not get contaminated, but the Jiva's consciousness temporarily can get contaminated by the interaction with material energy, just like the light can change its quality based on the color of the tinted glass. So friends, we have seen today that what is the root cause of suffering is the contamination of the consciousness. Just like air contamination leads to a lot of asthma and breathing diseases, similarly the consciousness contamination leads to depression and negative emotions and lack of bliss. So we have to cure the consciousness contamination by aligning to the will of Ishvara. When our activities are aligned to the will of Ishvara, it is called bhakti, which is purified activities. So that is the solution. Let's take and accept the solution of Bhagavad Gita and understand that the Lord, even when He descends to the material energy, unlike the living entities, He doesn't get contaminated. And that's why His words have value in the form of Bhagavad Gita. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.